Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Lorwyn Eclipsed Commander deck techs. I'm releasing new Lorwyn Commander decks every Thursday through mid-March when the Ninja Turtles set drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. So if you have a request for a specific Lorwyn Eclipsed Commander you'd like to see me build, or a way you want to see me build them, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is Bree of Clan Stoutarm, the daughter of Brian Stoutarm. Bree is a shepherd with a patient, peaceful outlook. She spends her days gathering feed for her sheep, or the sheep themselves, and taking naps in the sunlit meadows. She has let's call it an aversion to elves, the cause of her father's death, and recognizes that the best way to maintain her serenity is to distance herself from them. She accomplishes this by distancing them from her, yeeting the elves she encounters so that she can return to her herding. I love Bree, and not just because her art is absolutely stunning and incomparable, and I hope you'll enjoy what I've put together for her. Before we get to it, however, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why the card is so cool, and why I put it at the head of my deck. So whatever it asks of me, I put 30 cards toward doing that. That's our game plan. It's what we do at the table, and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan, in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 Wraths, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, but I almost always keep to my floor of 38 lands, so I can make sure I always hit my land drops, and I can cast my spells, and I can play the game. So let's talk about our commander. Bree of Clan Stoutarm is a 4/4 legendary giant warrior for 2 a red and a white, with 2 abilities. She has pay 1 a white and tap her, to give another target creature you control flying, and lifelink until end of turn. And, at the beginning of your end step, if you've gained life this turn, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost if the spell's mana value is less than or equal to the amount of life you've gained this turn. Otherwise, put it into your hand. So to explain Bree's first ability, we need to go back to her father Brian, who I mentioned in my intro. Brian has the ability to do damage equal to another creature's power by sacrificing that creature. This is Fling on a stick. But because it was Brian doing the damage, and he had lifelink, it meant that his controller, would gain life in the process. Sometimes you can do more than just lift your friends up. In any case, Bree is a bit of a throwback. While she's a warrior like her father, she's also a caretaker of her flock. She isn't willing to sacrifice them in the process of giving them a big boost, so her ability instead grants flying and lifelink to the creature that she alley-oops. And why don't they die in the process? My guess is that Bree is maybe catching them as they fall, playing a sort of game with them as she races back and forth through the pasture and sort of throws them to herself. Or maybe she's just tossing them underhanded. Either way, this gentle giant rewards us when we gain life, and through her loving launches of our creatures, her first ability empowers her second. And what a second ability. At minimum, it's an abundant harvest on non-lands, drawing us a card at our end step. That's on top of the life gain itself, and the more life we've gained, the better our chance of getting a free spell off the top, maybe even another piece of lammunition for Bree. So our game plan is split down the middle between creatures Bree can send skyward, and other ways we can gain life to turn on her card advantage engine. Since this makes us an evasive, combat-focused deck, we have a mana curve built around getting value creatures into play early and ramping into Bree. We take a little time to wind up, since we need both strong attackers and the mana to tap down our commander to send those attackers flying, but it's worth it once we can start pushing damage in the air and claiming cards at our end step. On top of that, we have a bunch of payoffs for all we're doing. We have creatures that get bigger or gain abilities when we gain life, cards that make tokens or draw us more cards from that life gain, cards that pump up our other creatures, and plenty of ways to turn our life gain into more life gain. We even have a way to keep from losing the game if our life gain can't keep up, and some alternate Wincons to keep us from forgetting that this is the softer side of the Stoutarms. And that's what matters most. We're not here to be the beatdown. We want to enjoy ourselves, to stride slowly through the grassy acreage of the board and play a nice game of catch with our friends. We send them a visitor, and once it hits, we'll be waiting below to scoop up our sheep and whatever they bring back down with them. Bree keeps our hand full, carding through our library and spinning into something new every turn. She does her part to make sure our life total looms large, all while fleecing our opponents of theirs. Our game plan may be soft and pliant, but if we follow its thread, we can weave our creatures past our pod's defenses and win through sheer force of twill. Let them worry about combat math and stress themselves out jockeying over first place. We'll wander through the game at whatever pace pleases us, and we'll pick up our win in the process of our Woolgathering. You'll enjoy this deck if you like seeing your life total rise and getting value each time it does, or if you like the slow and steady pace of a sleeping giant, roused from her slumber and ready to put your opponents in a world of herd. So as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, below the deck list, you will see a considering section full of cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately decided not to. But if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you have a different focus you want to use with Bree, or if you want to just enhance sort of what I'm doing here, the considering section is a great place to get started for ideas when you build your own Bree of Clan Stoutarm deck. So we're going to start with one of the two sort of biggest sections of our deck. The big part of our game plan is creatures we can send forth with Bree, which I've called Launchables. So we're going to start with an Lorwyn Eclipsed card. I should mention all these Launchables are, for the most part, good targets. I mean, they're all good targets for Bree to use to give lifelink and flying to with her first ability, but they're almost all creatures that have at least a power of 3 or can get there for us. So we want to be able to do enough damage and kind of cross the 3 points of life gained through lifelink threshold, since that turns on an awful lot of our other cards. So Burdened Stoneback from Lorwyn Eclipsed is first. This is 1 and a white for a giant warrior that is a 4/4, but it enters with 2 -1/-1 counters on it, so not ideal. However, we can cancel those out with +1/+1 counters that some of our other cards will put on them. However, we don't really need to, because for 1 and a white, we can also remove a counter from the Stoneback to give one of our creatures indestructible until end of turn, but only at sorcery speed. So this is pretty good. We throw this on either itself, because it doesn't say another target creature, or on Bree, or on anything else we want to fling with Bree. It's not really flinging, but you know, in order to make sure that when whatever Bree is tossing through the air hits our opponent, or whatever blockers they may have, it's going to gain us the life without us losing the creature. And in the process, the Stoneback gets a little bit bigger. It takes a stone, uses it to block whatever damage might be coming our creature's way, and then it doesn't have to carry it anymore, so it gets a little taller. Interestingly, if we put regular +1/+1 counters on this, once the -1/-1 counters are gone, we can also remove those to activate it, so a good synergy there. Next we have Voice of the Blessed. Double white for a 2/2 Spirit Cleric, so a little small for this section, but whenever we gain life, we put a 1/1 counter on this creature. This is one of what we call Pridemates. A Johnny's Pridemate is 1 and a white for a 2/2 cat that when you gain life, it gets a 1/1 counter. We have a number of cards that grow when we gain life, and we're calling those Pridemates. We'll look at them all soon. Voice of the Blessed is one of those. So it starts off as a 2/2 for 2 and gets bigger every time we gain life. And as long as it has 4 or more 1/1 counters on it, it has Flying and Vigilance. So it becomes a 6/6 Flying and Vigilance at minimum. And if it has 10 or more counters on it, 1/1 counters that is, it also has Indestructible. That doesn't supersede this, it just adds to it. So a 12/12 Flying Vigilant Indestructible, pretty good. But even if it just has those 4 counters on it, and we fling this with Bree, that means it's a 6/6. Bree gives it lifelink and flying, but it also already had flying, but it does have vigilance, so we can not just attack with it with Bree, but also block with it on the next turn. Pretty good. Next is Angel of Vitality. I don't have a lot of these cards that give us more life whenever we would gain life, just because it's not usually as valuable as cards that just trigger to gain us life, but the Angel is just very good. Here's why. She is a 2/2 Angel for 2 and a white. She has flying, and whenever we would gain life, we gain that much +1 instead. So this just adds an extra little bit of life every time we gain it, but it's not an additional instance of life gain, which is what we care about more in this deck. So gives us more life, just not in the form of more triggers. However, the Angel gets +2/+2 as long as we have 25 or more life. Astute students of the format know that players and commanders start with 40 life. So this comes in as a 4/4 flyer for 3, assuming we play it, at the start of the game, and continues to give us this ability. So this is one of a couple of different cards we have that is sort of a Sarah Ascendant, I guess. We're not running that one because that's expensive, but it comes in and is bigger than its printed stats, thanks to an ability and the fact that our format isn't standard. Next we have Claim Jumper. This is the one I went with for the multiple different sort of catch-up cards in white. So 2 and a white for a 3/3 Vigilant Rabbit Mercenary. Vigilance is very good in our deck, especially if we're throwing our cards with Bree, because we're able to, we don't have to just tap down our attacker and our commander in order to get one creature in. It's kind of a drawback to the way that Bree's ability works. But by making it so that we're attacking with creatures with Vigilance, we're tapping down our commander, attacking with the Claim Jumper, and we still have one creature to block with, even though we use a different creature, even though that was the same creature we attacked with, and we used a different creature to tap down. Anyway, you get it. So the Claim Jumper says, when it enters, if an opponent controls more lands than us, we can search our library for a plains and put it on the battlefield tapped, and if an opponent still controls more lands than us, we can repeat this process once. And if we search our library at all, we shuffle. So the Claim Jumper is, like I mentioned, a white creature that's a catch-up creature. It's meant to give us lands if we don't have as many lands as someone else, which may have meant that we've missed a land drop. But sometimes it comes from the fact that one of our opponents has ramped and we haven't. So if they control more lands than us, well, then we're just going to ramp as well. We can't end up ramping past our opponents, but if somebody is 2 lands ahead of us, the Claim Jumper gives us the ability to get 2 lands and put them into play. In addition, it just says a Plains card. It does not say a basic Plains card. So we have a couple of typed duels that we can use to fetch with this, and even though they come into play tapped, that means we're fixing our red mana in addition to our white mana here. So Claim Jumper is very nice. If you wanted to go a little lower on the curve, you could run Knight of the White Orchid. I like that card, but I like the Claim Jumper better because it's got just as good stats and doesn't have first strike, but it has Vigilance. And it's 1 more mana, but it can maybe get us another land. Anyway, it's good to run both. This is the one I went with when I had to cut things down because it's a better attacker for Bree. Next up is Alinda's Hierophant. For 2 and a white, we have a 1/1 Flying Vampire Cleric. That is a Pridemate. When we gain life, it gets a counter. And when it dies, we make a number of 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink equal to its power. So when it dies, it leaves behind at least one of these vampires anyway, even if it didn't have counters. So not a great creature to attack with using Bree's ability from the start, since it's just a 1/1, but if we were to do that with it, it's a 1/1. Hopefully it's doing damage and it's not dying, since we're not going to attack if it would. And now it's a 2/2. And we gain life another time, it becomes a 3/3. These Pridemates just get bigger and bigger and bigger over the course of our game. And the Hierophant, having flying innately, is very good. Resplendent Angel is next. This card used to be a lot of money. For 1 and double white, we have a 3/3 Flying Angel that says at the beginning of each end step, if you gained 5 or more life this turn, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with Flying and Vigilance. Make a Sarah Angel. Now, it does require us to gain 5 life, but that happens on each turn. So if we happen to have gained 5 life during an opponent's turn, at the end of that turn, if the Resplendent Angel is still in play, we get a Sarah Angel. And at the very least, 5 life is not hard for us to gain in our deck, especially because of Bree and the life link that she hands out. But if we don't have Bree, we can pay 3 in triple white to give the Resplendent Angel +2/+2 in lifelink until end of turn. So it's a 5/5 life flicker, which is exactly what we need to end up giving us a Sarah Angel. So Resplendent Angel is one of our token generators. I think it's the one that has the highest requirement for life gain, but it's inexpensive. It does a lot for us. Yeah, like it. Next, Exemplar of Light. For 2 and double white, we get a 3/3 Flying Angel. We have a bunch of angels in this deck. That says whenever we gain life, we put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So it's another Pridemate, but it's a flying Pridemate. Just like, I guess, the Hierophant is. And whenever we put one or more +1/+1 counters on this creature, we draw a card, but only once each turn. So every time we gain life, essentially for the first time each turn, the Exemplar is going to get bigger, and we're going to get a card. Every other time we gain life during that turn, it's just going to get bigger. That's still pretty alright. So yeah, this is a card that does a lot of work for us. And Printed Foundations. Next we have Audric Lunarch Marshal. Interesting card for this deck. A 3/3 legendary human soldier for 3 and a white that says at the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. The same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. We don't care about most of these, but we do care about a couple of them. Flying for one thing and lifelink for another, because at the beginning of each combat means this is a triggered ability. Bree has an activated ability. So if we haven't activated Bree prior to combat, we can activate Audric, or rather Audric's ability goes on the stack at the start of combat. We can activate Bree in response to it if we wish to, giving one of our creatures lifelink and flying. Then Audric's ability will resolve, and when it resolves, it sees that we have a creature with lifelink and flying, which means all of our creatures will have lifelink and flying for that turn, including Audric himself. We get to swing in with a big evasive board, all of which gains us life. Pretty good. Plus there's plenty of other things we can do to pass around these abilities. For example, the Burdened Stoneback can give something indestructible until end of turn. Audric will therefore make all of our creatures indestructible that turn when we go to combat. Pretty sweet. Just a good example of that. So next up is Twinblade Paladin. Now this can get Double Strike, which is something also Audric can pass around. Double Strike is sort of in the middle of that paragraph. So yeah. Twinblade Paladin, is another Pridemate. For 3 and a white, it's a 3/3 human knight. Whenever you gain life, you put a 1/1 counter on this creature, and as long as you have 25 or more life, this creature has Double Strike. So again, it doesn't get bigger like the Angel of Vitality, it just comes in with Double Strike, assuming we're at the beginning of the game. So gets bigger, has Double Strike in all likelihood. Yeah, very nice. And it was reprinted recently in Foundations, slightly cheaper in Core 20, but I don't really sort of min-max my prices, just I remember playing it in Core 20, so that's what I went with. Angel of Destiny is next. This is a weird one. 3 and double white for a 2/6 Angel Cleric with flying and double strike. So 2/6 double strike, pretty good. Whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each gain that much life. So this is a triggered ability. It's not like lifelink, it goes on the stack. And then when it resolves, we gain life, and so does the player that we dealt combat damage to. So for example, if the Angel of Destiny attacks, we're going to first strike and do 2 damage to that opponent, and we'll get this trigger. We will gain 2, and our opponent will also gain 2. So they do take 2 damage, but then they gain that life back. And then regular strike damage, it happens again. So over the course of this combat, with just the Angel of Destiny attacking, our opponent ends up back at the same life total they started with, and we have gained 4. So gaining 4 off of a 2-power double striker, why doesn't it just have lifelink? The reason is because we don't want it to seem like that big of a threat. You know, our opponent's going to gain this life. Maybe they have Lifegain payoffs too. And even if they don't, it's possible that, let's say they had 1 life left when we hit them for the first time. This is a triggered ability. So they'll die when state-based actions are checked before this triggered ability resolves. But assuming they didn't have 2 or less life, they're not going to die from this. They're just going to keep gaining the life back once we do the damage to them. And that's true of all of our creatures. It puts this trigger, this will trigger when any of our creatures does combat damage to a player. Whether it's first strike, regular damage, whichever creature it is, we're going to gain life off of their damage, and so is that opponent going to gain back the life that they lost. Now it's possible that they have some other kind of thing that makes the math messier, but this is good enough for what we're doing, because at the beginning of our end step, if we have at least 15 more life than our starting life total, so in Commander, if we have at least 55 life at the beginning of our end step, each player that the Angel of Destiny attacked this turn, not damaged, just attacked, loses the game. So this is an alternate win condition, or really it's an alternate loss condition for our opponents. So if our opponents are getting attacked by this thing, and they're like, what is this? It's just giving you lifelink in a weird way. We say, yeah, basically, that's all, and they're likely to forget, if they're unwise, that is, they're likely to forget this last ability, and they'll say, sure, well, I'll let it damage me, and then I'll just gain the life back. And we'll say, okay, we gain a little life off of it, and if that pushes us up to 55, we go to our end step, and they lose the game. So Angel of Destiny is a little known at tables, but not entirely. I think it went by with Zendikar Rising, and people didn't pay that much attention to it. I mean, some, but if you're not an Angels player or a Lifegain player, you may not know this card. So once it's read to you, it may not be something you retain, which means it might be able to sneak out some wins. And if it doesn't, it's still good, because it not only has the ability for us to gain life off of it while it remains on the battlefield, but it may not remain on the battlefield long because our opponents might use their removal on it. That's a good thing, because this is what I tend to call removal bait. It is something that's powerful, but not so intrinsically necessary to our game plan that if it's removed, we're just out of luck. So it's removal that's getting used on the Angel of Destiny rather than on Bree or something else that we might value more, even if our opponents aren't as scared of it. This has a greater intimidation factor than it really merits. It is a good card, don't get me wrong, and it will be sad to lose our 5-drop, but if we lose this versus our 4-drop commander that we need to wait a turn and have another creature in play to take the most advantage of, that's okay with me. So yeah, Angel of Destiny as removal bait, not terrible, and very good in other ways as well. Next we have Aurelia the Law Above. This is the Aurelia from Murders at Karlov Manor. I really like this card. I played it in Standard. For 3, a red and a white, we get a 4/4 legendary angel with flying, vigilance, and haste. It's pretty good. So several different things that Audric can pass around. It also says whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. Read that again. It does not say whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures. If opponent A attacks opponent B with 3 or more creatures, Aurelia draws us a card. So we need to pay attention, which we already should be, but especially to our opponent's attacks. If they attack us, if they attack someone else, if we attack someone, anytime anyone attacks with 3 or more creatures, we get a card off of it. And whenever anyone attacks with 5 or more creatures, Aurelia does 3 damage to each of our opponents and we gain 3 life. So she can gain us life if we're going wide or if someone else is. She does a lightning bolt to the face of each of our opponents. That's pretty good. And this are going to trigger at the same time. Because if someone's attacking with 5 or more creatures, then they sure are still attacking with 3 or more. So not only are we going to do 3 damage to each of our opponents and gain 3 life, but we're also going to draw a card, which means this is like bolting everyone's face, and 3 damage in a card is revitalized. So that's sweet. And just the repeated card draw when we're attacking with 3 things, or our opponents are, it's still good too. And since Aurelia has vigilance and flying, and haste, I guess, is also relevant to this comment, we can have her come in and immediately attack to get us up to 3 attackers if we only had 2. So yeah, anyway, Aurelia's a great card, a lot of fun. Next up, I am not a Lord of the Rings guy, so forgive me, Lord of the Rings players, and let me know in the comments what the right way to pronounce this is. This is Gwaihir. I'm going to say Gwaihir, Greatest of the Eagles. 4 and a white for a 5/5 legendary bird noble with flying. 5/5 flyer for 5 is fine. And whenever it attacks, target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn, so it jumps things. This is another way for us to get flying, and therefore evasion, to our creatures without having to use Bree for it, even though we want to use Bree if we can. In addition, at the beginning of each end step, if we gained 3 or more life this turn, we make a 3/3 white bird creature token with flying, and whenever it attacks, target creature gains flying until end of turn. So it's like a baby Gwaihir. It jumps things. And gaining 3 life and getting a flyer is Griffin Aviary, or Griffin Sanctuary? Griffin Aviary, I think. That's right. Yeah. Which normally makes a 2/2 Griffin. It doesn't make a 3/3 bird that can jump things. So yeah, Gwaihir, very nice for us. And even better, it has flying on its own, but if we use Bree to give it lifelink, we're flying in and something else is as well. And we're getting 5 life off of it. Great. Next is Rite of the Raging Storm. This card's so much fun in this deck. 3 and double red for an enchantment that says creatures named Lightning Rager can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. Okay? At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player creates a 5/1 red elemental creature token named Lightning Rager. Okay. It has trample, haste, and at the beginning of each end step, sacrifice this token, or the end state, which is the same thing. So everyone is going to get a 5/1 that doesn't have to attack, but it can't attack us. It's not goaded or anything, so they can just have it and then let it die. That's fine. Or they can attack with it, and it's like a little baby or a slightly smaller ball lightning. It's a trampling, hasty 5/1 that they aren't going to be able to keep until past the end step. So everyone's going to be attacking everyone else, and that helps us out because since they can't attack us with it. And they won't get rid of Rite of the Raging Storm unless they want to get rid of their ability to have these Lightning Ragers, which maybe is fine. Because what we're going to do is let our Lightning Rager come into play, then use Bree to attack with it. Since it's a token we have to sacrifice anyway, we don't care about it going away. It has Trample and Haste, and with Bree, Flying and Lifelink. So we're going to gain 5 life off of it, triggering all of our things that care about life gain, including empowering our commander's second ability for the end step. And we just keep getting more and more of them over and over. This is very, very nice. Also, we have Etali Primal Storm, 4 and double red for a 6/6 legendary Elder Dinosaur. So just a big boy, a big friend that will be able to attack in for us, do a bunch of damage, and gain us some life. But is also extremely inexpensive currency-wise. But also, Etali has a trigger, which is whenever Etali attacks, we exile the top card of each player's library, and then, still part of the same ability, resolution, we can cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana costs. So Etali is not cheap mana-wise, but cheap monetarily, very easy to put into a deck. Most players know what Etali does, and Etali gives us card advantage. Lets us cast spells from our opponent's decks and from our own, and so Etali is a little annoying. Not a huge threat, something of a threat, don't get me wrong. A 6/6 that we give flying and lifelink to that also does this is very good, but not a big deal if we happen to lose Etali, and so the removal bait aspect of it is great, especially because, like I mentioned, a little annoying. Yeah, love Etali. Felidar Sovereign is next. This is our other alternate Wincon that we've kept in the deck. 4 and double white for a 4/6 cat beast with vigilance and lifelink inherently, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game. So yes, if you play this and then you untap with it, you win, assuming it's the start of the game and you haven't lost any life. So the way people deal with Felidar Sovereign is either by removing it, so again removal bait, or by trying to attack so that we lose life. Luckily, it's a pretty good blocker and gains us life when it does damage. So even if we block with it and it dies, we're still going to gain that life off of it. But what we want to do is when we are down below 40 life, so this isn't immediately winning us the game, we want to untap with this and use Bree to attack with it. So we can attack with a 4/6 flying lifelink vigilance, gain 4 life, get Bree's second ability turned on, and then maybe get a little closer to having our alternate victory condition. That's fun. Next is Nykthos Paragon, 4 and double white for a 4/6 enchantment creature, human soldier, that says whenever you gain life, you may put that many 1/1 counters on each creature you control. Do this only once each turn. The reason it says do this only once each turn is we could choose not to do this. So that means if we gain, let's say we gain life twice in our turn. The first time we gain 2 life, and the next time we know we're going to gain a bunch of life from lifelink with our 5/1 Lightning Rager, let's say. So we gain the life the first time, and Nykthos Paragon triggers, and we choose not to put 2 counters on everything. Then the Lightning Rager does its damage. We gain 5 life, Nykthos Paragon triggers again, and we choose to put the counters on our creatures because now it puts 5 counters on everything. And the Paragon itself, of course, goes up to being a 9/11. So yeah, very nice flexibility for us. And as a 4/6, it blocks well, it attacks well in the air with Bree. Yeah, seems good. Next we have Sun Titan. Sun Titan is a classic, 4 and double white for a 6/6 vigilant giant that says whenever this creature enters or attacks, you may return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. We have this as a mana curve. So we have a solid 9, 21, 27 cards in our deck that are permanents that are mana value 3 or less that aren't lands. because we can, with Sun Titan, get lands back if we want. A permanent card, mana value 3 or less, means mana value 0 as well. So we've got more than a quarter of our deck in terms of spells, plus all of our lands, so that's more than half of our deck total, we can get back if it ends up in our graveyard some way. And that happens when the Titan enters and when he attacks. And when he attacks, hopefully he's doing it with Bree, with Bree's ability having targeted him. So he's attacking as a 6/6 flying vigilant lifelink creature, getting something back and then gaining us 6 life. Sun Titan's great for that. Another one that's 4 and double white is Valkyrie Harbinger from Kaldheim. We've got a couple of Kaldheim cards in this deck because angels. She's a 4/5 angel cleric with lifelink and flying, so not really gaining much from Bree, but that's good. We don't mind that. We can just attack with her in addition to whatever we've targeted with Bree's ability. And at the beginning of each end step, if you gained 4 or more life this turn, make a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying vigilance. So much like the Resplendent Angel, at the end step we make a Sarah Angel, but we only have to have gained 4 life. And that's what the Valkyrie Harbinger's able to gain us on its own when she attacks. So a great way to turn on the Harbinger, but also turn on the Resplendent Angel if we've gained just 1 other life from some other source, since the Harbinger is going to get us that 4. So yeah, very nice as another way for us to make more tokens. And those tokens, again, are flying and vigilant. We give them lifelink with Bree, they're great attackers. Next, also from Lorwyn Eclipsed, is Curious Colossus. This card is great. 5 and double white for a 7/7 giant warrior. Also, notice the giants we have in this deck. You can build to a giant typal thing with Bree. I don't think it's worth it, but there are plenty of giants that are in the considering section if you want to see that. It's just important for later on. So the Colossus says when it enters, each creature target opponent controls loses all abilities, becomes a coward in addition to its other types, and has base power and toughness 1/1. It does not say until end of turn. It's permanent. This is like Eaten by Piranhas, or Witness Protection, or Frogify, any of these cards that are auras, but this is not an aura. This just makes an opponent lose all their creatures and have those creatures replaced by 1/1 cowards, essentially. Without those creatures even going to exile or the graveyard or back to the command zone, because this will affect commanders as well. So I call this a board wipe. It's not really one, but when we have a commander that can give evasion in the form of flying, and one of our opponents, all of their creatures just lost all abilities, that's pretty close. So they can play additional creatures, and those creatures will come in as they're printed. But the Colossus is very nice for all of this. It makes a big change to the battlefield when it hits, and assuming we untap with it, it's French vanilla, or rather it's virtual vanilla, because it has an enters effect, and then that's all. So we can just attack with it with Bree later, and it's a 7/7 flying vigilant. Pretty great. Next we have Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. 4 a red and double white for a 5/5 legendary angel with flying and first strike. So we get a little first strike for Audric. That says if a source would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, that source deals double damage to that player or permanent instead. All of our sources do double damage to our opponents, but not just that. It doesn't say a source you control. All of our opponents do double damage to each other. Anything that does damage to our opponents and to their stuff, their permanents, their battles, their planeswalkers, their creatures especially, all that damage is going to get doubled. If you have something that causes you to take damage or causes your creatures to take damage, our opponents are doing double damage to themselves and their own things. As long as it's being dealt to someone who is our opponent or is a permanent that opponent controls, the damage is doubled. Amazing. And if a source would deal damage to us or one of our permanents, we prevent half of it rounded up. So rounded the way we want. So we're taking half damage, and so is our stuff. Everyone else and their stuff is taking double damage. Doesn't matter what the source is, just matters what the recipient is. Gisela is another kill on sight piece of removal bait. Sounds good to me. Because this means if we're doing double damage to things, then the amount of life we're gaining with our life linkers is also doubled. Nice. We've got another giant. It's a Realm Cloaked Giant. Realm Cloaked Giant is an adventure creature. So if you haven't seen adventures before, this is the way it works. This is a card with 2 spells on it. You can either cast it as the giant for 5 and double white, and when you do, you'll get a 7/7 Vigilant Giant. And then that's the end of it. Or, while it's in your hand, you can cast Cast Off, which is a sorcery, an adventure, instead of the giant. Cast Off is 3 and double white for a sorcery that destroys all non-giant creatures. And if you cast Off, this card will then go into exile, and you are permitted to cast Realm Cloaked Giant for 5 and double white from exile. So you can either go adventure and then creature, or you can just play the creature. You cannot cast Off once the Realm Cloaked Giant is out of your hand and on the battlefield. So this is pretty nice. It's another one of our board wipes. For 5 mana, we get rid of everything except our non-giants, except for our giants rather, which includes Bree. So we get to keep our commander. We don't have to recast her. So this is a great way for us to have a sweeper and clear the board if we need it for both evasive reasons, but also just to sort of reset things. And if we cast the giant, whether or not we've cast Off first, we get a 7/7 Vigilant creature that we can give flying and lifelink to. Very nice. Finally, just for fun, Sarah Avatar with the Victor Adame Minguez art because it's amazing. 4 and triple white for a star avatar with power and toughness each equal to our life total. So yes, this might get down. This might be a 2/2 at some point. If that's the case, we are in a worse situation than just having a 2/2. But if this is coming down when we have 50 or 60 life, it's a 50 or a 60-60. It's amazing. We use Bree to give this flying and lifelink, and we double our life total, whether or not it does damage to a player. And when it's put into a graveyard from anywhere, we shuffle it into our library. So pretty good. That's not really super necessary, but just having something that's very big for a lot of mana is enough. There are other creatures that do things that are similar to this, and if you wanted to shift into one of those, there's several in the considering section. I considered putting Evra Halcyon Witness in this deck. I ended up going with Sarah Avatar because it's a little splashier, but there's lots of different fun things you can do. Also, Evra requires a significant mana investment when being used as an attacker, and we're already having to invest mana in not just casting our spells, but also activating our commander. So yeah, there's a balance to be struck. Anyway, a lot of fun. Really fun to see how it gets huge. Yeah, love Sarah Avatar. So that is our section on launchables. We're going to see, I guess we'll just go on to the next section, which is Lifegain. This is our Lifegain section. It is this 22 cards, just like our launchable section was. So let's get into it. First, we have Authority of the Consuls, which they reprinted in Foundations, thankfully. And I killed a lot of people with this at the pre-release. Sorry, I had a couple of friends who said, don't run that in your deck. And I was running Black-White Lifegain. And they're like, nah, it's not going to be worth it for you. It helped. Yeah, it was so good. Anyway, Authority of the Consuls is a single white for an enchantment that makes our opponent's creatures enter tapped. And whenever they do, we gain a life. So this is life gain from our opponent's creatures entering, which is a Johnny's Welcome in reverse. And that's pretty great. But also, being able to make our opponent's creatures come in tapped means it turns off haste, essentially. It turns off anything that would help them activate their abilities right away, if they have like a tap ability. Just slows them down, makes it so we and our other opponents are able to attack each opponent better because they can't just play out a blocker. Even if they flash it in, it's going to come in tapped. So yeah. Also includes their token creatures, so it's worth thinking about. Curious Farm Animals from the recent Avatar set is very good too. A single white for a 1/1 boar, elk, bird, ox. And that's because we have a boar, a bird, and ox that are all crossbreeds? Elks? Anyway, something's going on here. When this creature dies, we gain 3 life. Pretty good. And we can pay 2 and sacrifice it to destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So this is a disenchant on a stick that we gain 3 life off of when we use it. It's when it dies, not when we sacrifice it, so we can also block with this. Or even if we really want to, attack with it with Bree. It does 1 point of damage, gaining us 1 life, probably dies in the process from being blocked, so we gain 3 more life, so we've gained 4 life over the course of the turn. That's enough for our Valkyrie to give us a Sarah Angel. Yeah, might be workable. Fountain of Renewal is next. Kind of an interesting include in this deck from M19. This is a single mana for an artifact that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 1 life, and we can pay 3 and sack it to draw a card. So in a way, this gives us card draw in 2 ways. So we can pay 3 and sack it and draw a card, but the fact that just having it on the battlefield means every one of our turns starts with us gaining a life turns on Bree's second ability. So we're going to Abundant Harvest into something, or cast something for free if we've gained a bunch of other life, or if we find a 1-drop every turn. Fountain of Renewal just ensures we're always getting it. We don't have to have like creatures enter, or to cast spells that gain us life, whatever it may be. Fountain of Renewal guarantees life gain at the start of each of our turns. Very good. Plus, that's not just that, it's gaining us life, which could be helpful to payoffs on other cards we have, and also just maybe we need that life, you never know. So very inexpensive, and it does several things. It's usually not worth putting in a deck, but in this deck, I think it's easily over the line for is this includable for 1 mana? I think so. Guide of Souls is next from Modern Horizons 3. A single white gets us a 1/2 human cleric that says whenever another creature we control enters, we gain a life and an energy counter. Energy are counters that go on us as a player. We just sort of keep a track of them off to the side, and the only card in the deck that uses them is Guide of Souls. So whenever we attack with any creatures, doesn't have to be the Guide of Souls, we can pay 3 energy. And when we do, we put 2 1/1 counters and a flying counter on one of our attacking creatures, and it becomes an angel in addition to its other types. So the idea with Guide of Souls, who is clearly from Kaldheim, is as we have enough creatures come in, we get more and more energy, and we can expend that energy to make one of our creatures into a flying angel that's a little bit stronger. You know, +2/+2, that's pretty good. So not only is Guide of Souls a way for us to pump up our creatures and give them evasion without us needing to use Bree to make them flyers, Guide of Souls is a Soul Sister, which is a creature that when it sees one of our other creatures enter, it gains us a life. So the energy counter is something extra, but we've got several different Soul Sisters in this deck, and we'll see some more of them as we go. Restoration Magic from Final Fantasy comes next. A single white for an instant that is tiered, which means we have to pay 1 additional cost. There's 3 different options we have. The first, Cure, is 0 generic mana. So we are paying that extra cost, but it's only costing us white total, which is target permanent, gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. It doesn't say target permanent you control, so we can use this politically. We can say, hey, I know an opponent is targeting your commander with Generous Gift. I can stop that from happening. What will you give me in return? And then someone may be up for that, and we can use Restoration Magic to help somebody else out. But typically we're using this on Bree, or one of our attackers that Bree has flung into the air. Hexproof and Indestructible, pretty good for a single white. But instead of a single white, if we spend a white and 1, we do Cura, I guess. I'm not a Final Fantasy person, so forgive me about these. Where target permanent gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, and you gain 3 life. So same thing, except we also gain 3 life for an extra 1, which turns on Bree's second ability. It triggers our other payoff cards that care about life gain. Pretty good. Finally, Curaga is a total of 3 and double white. Permanents you control, so this has to work for us. Gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, and you gain 6 life. So a big life gain that triggers several of our things, including Resplendent Angel, and makes all of our stuff hexproof and indestructible. Pretty good, all at instant speed. Next we have Blind Obedience. This is from the Wilds of Eldraine Enchanting Tales bonus sheet. Love these cards. So Blind Obedience is 1 and a white for an enchantment that says artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter tapped. So it affects the artifacts of our opponents, not just the creatures, the way that Authority of the Consuls does. But that's not why we care about it. We care about it because it has Extort. Extort means whenever we cast a spell, any spell, we can pay a white or a black. Now this is in the reminder text, so this does not violate the Commander color identity rules. Since this is not actually text on the card, it's reminder text, which we pretend is not there. It just reminds us how the extort mechanic works. Don't worry, you can run this in your white-red deck. So whenever we cast a spell, we can pay a white, since we don't really have access to black. And if we do, each opponent loses a life, and we gain that much life. Meaning, if we cast a spell, and we pay a single extra mana, a white mana, and we've got 3 opponents, then in addition to having gotten that spell, everyone's going to lose 1, and we're going to gain 3, which turns on so much of our stuff and helps Bree out a lot. We already saw we have 27 spells, just permanent spells, that cost 3 or less. So being able to get access to that, maybe we cast a second spell and we pay an additional mana again. Great, we've just gained 6 life for 2 extra mana. Yeah, Blind Obedience is a lot of fun in this deck. Plus, it has this little bit of a Staxy effect, and I like that. Next we have Daxos, Blessed by the Sun, another one of our Soul Sisters, technically. Double white for a 2/star legendary enchantment creature demigod. Daxos' toughness is equal to our devotion to white. So devotion is a mechanic from Theros that means we look at the number of white pips in all of our permanents, and the total number of those is our devotion to white. So if we have these 8 cards in play, let's say, then our devotion is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because Restoration Magic and Lightning Helix are not permanents. So Daxos gives us 2 on his own, Blind Obedience gives us 1 more, Authority, Curious Farm Animals, and Guide of Souls all give 1 more in addition. So that's a total of 6. So Daxos would be a 2/6. Pretty good, meaning Daxos is always at least a 2/2. And whenever another creature we control enters or dies, we gain 1 life. So this is very nice in that it's not just a Soul Sister for, caring about our creatures entering. If our creatures happen to die, no big deal. We gain some life off of it. Next, we're running Lightning Helix. Gotta love Lightning Helix. Red and a white for an instant that deals 3 damage to any target and gains us 3 life. So it's Lightning Bolt and Healing Salve together. Just great, Wouldn't you run this over Lightning Strike? Wouldn't you? I would. So I did. Revitalize is next, also with the Strixhaven Mystical Archive printing. I really like these. 1 and a white for an instant that gains us 3 life and draws us a card. I've played enough Lifegain that Revitalize just does work. And there are better cards if you want to just gain life, for a rate of 2 mana or even 1 mana. But the card off the top, just replacing itself and gaining us 3 life, this can open up so many doors for us with Bree and with our other creatures, being able to do this in instant speed, especially with our Pridemates when we're already attacking, let's say. But then having it replace itself just gives us a lot more as well. Very nice. Suture Priest is another Soul Sister. 1 and a white for a 1/1 Phyrexian Cleric that says whenever another creature we control enters, we may gain a life. We will. And whenever another creature an opponent controls enters, you may have the player lose 1 life. Generally we will, A couple of dollars for this, but very nice to be able to have 1 more source of life gain every time one of our many, many creatures in our deck, we've got 33 creatures, including the priest and our commander, of course, enters, and just drain our opponents a little bit in the process. Might as well. Deafening Clarion is next. This is another board wipe, technically. For 1, a red, and a white, we have a sorcery that lets us choose 1 or both. Deafening Clarion deals 3 damage to each creature, which will kill a lot of our creatures, but it won't kill Bree. And creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. So we can use this just for 3 mana, at sorcery speed, albeit, to give all of our creatures lifelink. Or we can blast the board with 3 damage from this Deafening Clarion, and anything of ours that has remained gains lifelink. So when we attack, having cleared, hopefully, an opponent's entire suite of blockers, but maybe just all of the ones that we cared about, we get to attack with lifelink. And remember, if we attack and they have some creatures that survived, those creatures still do have 3 damage marked on them, as do ours. So we may be able to trade up in some ways that we hadn't expected to. Next is Halia, Guided by Light from Edge of Eternities. Love her. 2 and a white for a 3/3 legendary human soldier that says whenever she or another creature or artifact we control enters, we gain a life. Halia gains a life when she comes in, when one of our other 32 creatures comes in, when one of our 14 artifacts comes in, any of our tokens. Halia gives us life left and right. And at the beginning of our end step, we draw a card if we've gained 3 or more life this turn. So great, she gives us card draw as well. Can she give us any more? Well, Halia has Warp for a single white. Warp is an ability, an alternate casting cost, that lets us cast her for just 1 white rather than 3. And when we do that, at the end step, we exile her, and then we can cast her for her regular cost on a later turn. So we can pay a single white, have Halia come in, and when she comes in, she gains us a life. Then, if we gain 2 more life that turn, at the beginning of our end step, we're going to get the Warp delayed trigger and this trigger. And we can have this trigger resolve first, so we'll draw a card having gained more life. The reason we'd want to have it resolve first, because it seems like it wouldn't matter since we're going to get both, is because we want the Warp trigger to resolve last as much as we're able to, since there are ways in our end step to gain more life with Halia. For example, if we have Bree's trigger resolve first, and Bree casts us a spell that's like, maybe we warped Halia in, and we gained a life, and we didn't do anything else, but or maybe we've gained a second life somehow. You know, we played our Fountain of Renewal artifact, gained a second life. So we've only got 2 life. But at the end step, Bree spins us into a Revitalize, which is 2 mana, so we can cast it for free, gaining 3 more life. And now Halia has seen us gain 5 life, so we get to draw a card off of her from her trigger, since it resolves after Bree's trigger. And then we warp her away. So we can keep gaining life during our end step before Halia's beginning of our end step trigger resolves if we stack it properly, which is why we want her warp delayed trigger to happen last, because we want to take advantage of this second ability if we can during the end step. And there's a lot of times that we are able to. Next up is Pristine Talisman. This is one of our ramp pieces. 3 generic mana for an artifact that lets us tap for colorless, and we gain a life when we do. So not ideal that it's manalith pricing, but it gives us non-colored mana. But being able to gain a guaranteed life every turn just by tapping it for mana, even if we don't use that mana for a spell, very nice for us. Helps out with Bree a lot. Ajani, Strength of the Pride is next, one of our planeswalkers. 2 and double white for a 5 loyalty Ajani planeswalker, that if we +1 him, we gain life equal to the number of creatures we control plus the number of planeswalkers we control. So we're going to gain at least 1 life because Ajani sees himself. Then, -2, we can make a 2/2 white cat soldier creature token named Ajani's Pridemate with whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on this token. This is just Ajani's Pridemate. It's just a 1 and a white spell that for -2 on Ajani, we can make a token copy of, or a token version of. This is the reason we call these kind of creatures Pridemates. Not because of Ajani Strength of the Pride, but because Ajani makes these little friends that were already a card. You get it. So if we need extra creatures, we can do that. Otherwise, we're just going to plus Ajani every turn and just keep gaining life. And at a 0 cost, so we lose and gain no loyalty. If you have at least 15 more life than your starting life total, so 55 life or more, exile Ajani and each artifact and creature your opponents control. Each. This is a crazy board wipe. Very strong for us. We do lose Ajani in the process, but that's okay. Ajani can be down to a single loyalty. We can still activate this as long as we have enough life for it. Very nice. Next is Cosmos Elixir, another call time card. 4 generic mana for an artifact that says at the beginning of your end step, draw a card if your life total is greater than your starting life total, otherwise you gain 2 life. So if our life total is 40 or less, we're going to gain 2. And then if our life total is 41 or more, we'll draw a card. So this gives us cards a lot of the time in our deck. Otherwise, it gains us life. And it's happening at the end step. But if we stack this trigger to resolve before Bree's trigger, then we're going to have 2 life added to whatever Bree would have given us when she does her thing. Because it is worth noting, Bree's trigger has an intervening if clause. What this means is, at the beginning of our end step, if we gained life this turn, this ability triggers. If at the beginning of our end step we have yet to gain life, This ability won't trigger at all. It just doesn't even go on the stack, doesn't even care. That's how intervening if clauses work. This will not trigger if we haven't gained life, meaning if we have the Cosmos Elixir, which we'll find it here. The Cosmos Elixir triggers at the beginning of our end step as well, meaning if we have not gained any life that turn, and we're thinking, oh, we can put this trigger first above Breeze trigger, let this resolve, and then we have gained life. That's not how it works, unfortunately. Breeze trigger won't go on the stack at all for you to put in whatever order you want unless we've gained at least 1 life. If we haven't gained any life and we have Cosmos Elixir and Bree in play, Cosmos Elixir will trigger at our end step and Bree will not. That's how the intervening if clause works. But if we have gained some life and we have Bree and Cosmos Elixir in play, their triggers will both go on the stack, and we can put the Cosmos Elixir trigger on top so it resolves first. And if it would gain us life, since our life total is 40 or less, then we get 2 extra life, and Bree's able to find something bigger for us with her ability, since we've got more life gain. Just worth remembering, we can't rely on Cosmos Elixir to gain us guaranteed life and therefore make sure Bree's trigger goes on the stack at all, if it's the only source of life gain we have, as opposed to something like Fountain of Renewal. Next up we have Paradise Plume. This is an expensive mana rock, but it's a good one. For 4 generic mana, we have an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color, of the chosen color rather, because as it enters, we choose a color. We will choose white, because our deck is mostly white. And it says, whenever a player casts a spell of the chosen color, you may gain 1 life. We may. We will. And it's whenever a player. So we may be the only white player at the table, but if we're not, anyone else who's casting white spells, or if they cast something that's, maybe they've stolen a card from us and they cast it for mana of any type, even if they don't spend white mana on it, if the spell is white, we can still gain a life. So Paradise Plume is a great way for us to not guarantee that we're going to gain life every turn, the way that Pristine Talisman does, since we can tap it to gain life. Paradise Plume only gains this life if we cast a spell that's white, assuming we've chosen white. But it can give us a lot more life over the course of a turn. Plus, it makes colored mana, so pretty good for us. Next, we have Koala, Ajani's Pridemate. I know it says this is Ajani's Pridemate. It is not the Ajani's Pridemate card. It's just an interesting card from Foundation's Jumpstart. So this is 3 and a white for a 3/3 Legendary Cat Warrior that says whenever Koala attacks, or Kala? It might be Kala. Whenever Kala attacks, other attacking creatures you control get plus X plus O until end of turn, where X is the number of counters on Kala. And whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on Kala. So the Pridemate text, and we get to share those counters in the form of power, but not toughness, with other attacking creatures whenever Kala attacks. And if we've got some mana, which we don't usually have mana lying around, but if we do, we can spend 4 on it to just gain a life. That's at instant speed, and pump up Kala on an opponent's turn if we want to. Yeah. Next is Wall of Reverence, a card we can't even attack with because it is a defender. This is a 1/6 Spirit Wall for 3 and a white. It has flying, so it can block flyers, but it has defender, so it can't attack. However, at the beginning of our end step, you may gain life equal to the power of target creature you control. That's great. It's like we have sort of lifelink after the fact. We don't even have to do damage with our creature with good power to gain that life. And Wall of Reverence has a power of 1, so at the very least we can just gain 1 during our end step. Much like we mentioned for Cosmos Elixir, or I mentioned, I should say, there's not more of me in this room. We can't use Wall of Reverence to make sure Bree's end step triggers at all, but if it was already triggering, we can stack this so that it resolves before Bree's trigger and therefore have gained more life so that her trigger is more empowered to find us bigger cards that we can cast. We've seen Angel of Destiny. It makes it so all of our creatures have Spirit Link, a triggered ability that gains us life. Aurelio can gain us life when any player attacks with 5 or more creatures, plus, in addition to drawing us a card and doing 3 damage to each of our opponents. Next we have Balefire Liege. This is sweet, and I think originally from Lorwyn, am I right? From Eventide, there you go. So the plane of Lorwyn, yeah. Balefire Liege is a 2/4 Spirit Horror for 2 and triple Boros hybrid mana. So we can cast this for 2 and triple red, triple white, 2 red and a white, or 2 white and a red. So all of these pips have to be either white or red, but they can be whichever ones you want. And then 2 generic. So in a way, in this deck, this is kind of like 5 generic mana. Anyway, so other red creatures you control get +1/+1, and other white creatures you control get +1/+1. Both of these are separate abilities, obviously, which means anything we have that's both red and white, it's getting affected by both of them. So Bree is getting +2/+2 from this. Whenever we cast a red spell, Balefire Liege deals 3 damage to target player or planeswalker. That's pretty good. So just a straight up, it's not exactly lightning bolt. There's another name for this. Can't hit creatures, can't hit battles with this, but we can hit players and planeswalkers. That's good removal, and that's good burn. And whenever we cast a white spell, we gain 3 life. So a very nice bonus on top of what Paradise Plume was doing for us. If we cast white spells with this, assuming we've chosen white, we'll gain 1. Balefire Liege, whenever we cast white spells, we gain 3. So yeah, good for us. Finally, we have our other planeswalker, which is Quintorius Khand. Love Quint. This is a 4 loyalty planeswalker, Quintorius, for 3 a red and a white, with a static ability. Whenever we cast a spell from exile, Quintorius deals 2 damage to each opponent, and we gain 2 life. So that is happening during our end step, at the very least. If we cast a spell using Bree's ability, we're casting it from exile. We've exiled our way into something, and we can cast that, assuming it is, assuming the spell we find has a mana value of equal to or less than the amount of life we've gained this turn. So we can't get extra life to find something better from Quintorius since we got to stack it a different way, but Quint does give us the ability to do damage to our opponents and gain a little life, in addition, triggering our other life gain payoffs when we cast that spell, plus a little burn. We can +1 Quint to make a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. That is a red and white creature, so Balefire Liege is making into a 5/4. Pretty good. We can -3 Quint to discover 4. The discover mechanic, which is not, we don't have any reminder text here. The way it works is you exile cards from the top of your library until you find a spell mana value 4 or less. 4 or less. Then we can either cast it without paying its mana cost, or we can put it in our hand, and everything we exiled before we got to that card goes on the bottom of our library in any order, or a random order maybe. In any case, it's bottom of our library, but we get to find a spell, mana value 4 or less, whichever one the first one we get to is, and cast it, or put it in our hand. So pretty good. If we do cast it though, we are casting it from exile, so it will trigger Quintorius's static ability. And if we can get Quint all the way up to 6 or more loyalty, we can -6 him, exile any number of target cards from our graveyard, add a red mana for each card exiled this way, and we can play those cards this turn. Play means if we happen to exile a land from our graveyard, we can play it as our land drop for the turn, assuming we haven't already made our land drop. And we've got mana to cast any spells that we have exiled this way. So this ability, not as exciting or likely to happen in this deck as having Quint come down, immediately discovering 4, burning everyone and gaining us some life, and then every other turn we're just making spirits that we can either throw with Bree or just have as blockers. Pretty good. That is Quintorius, and that is our life gain section. I want to touch on a few of our life gain sources in the form of our Soul Sisters. We've got 3 of them in this deck, but a lot more in the considering section. Guide of Souls, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, we gain a life, plus energy counter. Daxos gains us a life when a creature enters or dies on our side. And Halia gains us a life when she, another creature, or another artifact we control, enters on our side. So 3 different ways to get great, repeatable, creature-based life gain. So we have another section that I've been talking about a couple of times. I usually leave payoffs for our supplemental section, but it's important to see what we're getting out of all of this life gain, in addition to just the life gain itself and turning our commander's second ability on. We're going to start with a removal spell called Self-Destruct from the Final Fantasy set. 1 in a red for an instant that says target creature you control deals X damage to any other target and X damage to itself where X is its power. So this is like Fling in a way. If we have a creature that's a 4/4, it's going to do 4 damage to itself and something else, and so it's going to die from that, but it's going to have done 4 damage. So we spent 1 in a red, had a creature die, and did its damage. It did damage equal to its power to something. So that's like Fling, right? Except if we used Bree on that creature beforehand, that creature has lifelink. So it's not just doing that X damage and gaining us that life when it does the damage to any target, it's also doing that damage to itself. So it's doing damage to two different sources, so we're going to gain its power in life twice. So if we did this with a 4/5 creature, we can do 4 damage to any target, 4 damage to the creature itself, and gain 8x life, or gain 8 life rather, because that's how the lifelink would work. So this is a good way for us to double up on life gain when we would actually fling something. And the fact that this can go face is pretty good. It can hit players or planeswalkers in addition to creatures. We've seen Voice of the Blessed. It's a Pridemate. It gets bigger when we gain life. So is the Hierophant. Halia draws us a card if at our end step we've gained 3 or more life. Lelia the Blade Reforged is next. 2 and a red for a 2/2 legendary spirit warrior with haste. Lelia, whenever she attacks, we exile the top card of our library and we can play that card this turn. So a little bit of card advantage. Maybe we can't do it, but that's okay, no big deal. And whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from your library and or your graveyard, put a 1/1 counter on Lelia. That means when this happens, Lelia gets bigger. So we can play her for 3. She comes down as a 2/2 haste, attack with her immediately. When she does attack, we exile something, and when we exile that thing, she gets a counter. So she attacks immediately as a 3/3. Pretty good. Also, whenever we exile things, she gets a counter. That's not life gain, but that's a different kind of payoff for us. Bree exiles things until we get to a non-land card. Lelia sees every card we exile, which is not just that non-land card. Because remember, this ability, what this does is if we have, at the top of our library is 3 lands and then a spell, we're going to put those 3 lands into exile, and it never says to put them on the bottom of our library. They're just going to stay in exile. They're gone forever. And then we exile that non-land, and we can either cast it or put it into our hand. So if there were 3 lands and a spell, and then a spell on top of our library, Bree's trigger is going to exile those 3 lands forever, and then exile that spell to let us cast it or put it into our hand. Lelia, if I can find her in where I want to be, yeah, here she is. Lelia is going to see us exile 4 cards. So she's going to get 4 counters. Pretty great. And every turn we attack with her, we're going to get to exile another card and make her a little bit bigger, and we can play that card that turn. Lelia is very easy to get big enough that we can use her to attack with Bree. There's not a guarantee that we can, so I didn't put her in that section, because she has a little bit of a reputation, but she's pretty inexpensive since they reprinted her in MH3, so yeah, Lelia, very nice for us, and like Quintorius, a payoff for the exiling we're hopefully doing at the end of every turn with Bree. Resplendent Angel makes us a token angel if we've gained 5 or more life at our end step. The Book of Exalted Deeds does something similar. This is triple white for a legendary artifact that says at the beginning of our end step, if we've gained 3 or more life this turn, we make a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. So it's not a Sarah Angel, it's not a 4/4, it doesn't have vigilance, but it's a 3/3 flyer, and that's pretty good. We can also pay triple white, tap, and exile the Book of Exalted Deeds to put an Enlightened counter on target angel. Enlightened counters don't do anything inherently, they're just used by this card. But they kind of aren't even. It's just put an Enlightened counter on target angel, that angel gains, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game, activate only as a sorcery. So you'll notice the Enlightened counter doesn't actually do anything in this ability, it is only there for memory issues. It's just meant to say, get a counter that looks a little weird, get like a D4 or something, put it on your card, so you know this has got an Enlightened counter, so it helps you remember which of your angels has become a Platinum Angel, making it so you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. So if an opponent does kill that angel, then yeah, this effect goes away. But being able to do this with the Book of Exalted Deeds is pretty sweet if we don't want to have it in play so that we can keep making 3/3 flyers every end step during a turn we've gained 3 or more life. We also have a fun trick with this ability, which you'll see during our land base. So Book of Exalted Deeds gives us a payoff in the same way that Resplendent Angel does, just it doesn't require as much life gain, but it doesn't give us as big of an angel either. A Johnny can create Pridemates. So much like the Hierophant and the Voice of the Blessed, we have a payoff here for gaining life. In addition, being able to do a sweet board wipe that's asymmetrical once we've gained 15 or more life is a pretty good payoff too. But we'll talk more about that in the synergy section. Exemplar of Light is another Pridemate, but also draws us cards the first time we gain life each turn. Qualla, a Johnny's Pridemate, is a Pridemate. Twinblade Paladin is another Pridemate, gets counters when we gain life, but also it has a synergistic payoff of getting double strike when we have 25 or more life. Gwahir makes us a 3/3 flyer if we've gained 3 or more life this turn. That flyer is not an angel, but it can jump other creatures, so a little bit better than these angels that the Book of Exalted Deeds makes. Plus it's a 5/5 flyer that jumps things on its own. We've got Quintorius, which is a payoff, much like Lelia is, for casting spells from exile. It's not the same thing as cards being put into exile, but similar enough for our uses. Nykthos Paladin puts counters on our creatures only once each turn, whenever we gain life, if we want. And Valkyrie Harbinger is another one of these, make a flyer token if you, at the end step, have gained enough life. So we've seen all of these payoffs, and just like we saw after the Lifegain section, we saw the Soul Sisters, here are all the Pridemates. All of these are cards that I've already covered, but they're things that give us a benefit with a triggered ability of them getting bigger every time we gain life. Ajani, of course, being in this category because he makes a Pridemate. Everything else in here is a Pridemate. So worth noticing. So that's a bunch of cards, and it covers most of our game plan. So we're going to talk about the cards that supplement our game plan, but first, I want to go over our support categories for that game plan. Oop, going a little crazy. Starting with our card advantage section, which as usual I've just tagged as draw. It doesn't mean that all these cards actually do the draw action. It just gives us access to more cards that we would want to have. So Fountain of Renewal, of course, draws us a card if we pay 3 and sack it, but also is the one card in our deck that really does guarantee that our commander is going to get her second trigger and at least put a card in our hand at our end step. Mind Stone is next. This is really more of a mana source for us, a ramp source. 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for colorless mana, so it's a mana rock. But also we can pay 1, tap, and sack it to draw a card if we want to late game get rid of it. If we don't need it anymore for mana, and we would rather get something into our hand. Revitalize, of course, gains us life and draws us a card. Halia draws us a card at our end step if we've gained 3 or more life that turn. Lelia, every time we attack with her, exiles a card from the top of our library that we can play that turn, so it's not drawing a card, but it's close. Lorwyn of the Third Path is my favorite Reclamation Sage. She is 2 and a white for a 2/1 legendary human artificer with vigilance. When she enters, she destroys up to 1 target artifact or an enchantment, so she is a disenchant on a stick. Very good. But we can also tap her, and we and another player, an opponent, each draw a card. So we can use this politically for sure, but at the very least we say, you look like you're the person who would least be able to use an extra card. You can have one, and we'll get one too. So this is a good way for us to repeatedly get additional card advantage and maybe make an ally at the table by feeding them cards in exchange for them being kind to us or teaming up with us somehow. Cosmos Elixir draws us a card at our end step if our life total is 41 or greater. Exemplar of Light draws us a card every time it gets a counter on it for the first time each turn. 1/1 counter, that is. Aurelia draws us a card every time any player attacks with 3 or more creatures. Quintorius can discover 4 at least once when he comes down, so that gives us access to another card in hand if we're not just casting it. And Atali, every time Atali attacks, lets us exile the top card of everyone's library, and hopefully we didn't exile 4 lands, so we can cast at least something off of that. So there we go. That is our card advantage section. Let's talk now about our acceleration, which again I've just shorthanded as ramp. We're of course running Soul Ring. Soul Ring costs a single generic mana. It's an artifact that taps for 2 colorless mana. It's the best mana rock you can run, so run it. Wayfarer's Bauble is next. This is 1 generic mana for an artifact that if we pay 2, tap, and sack it, we can do a rampant growth for ourselves. Search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Rampant Growth is in green. We are in red and white, so a great way to fix our mana. Maybe we're really hurting for that third white pip, so we can go find a plains with this. Maybe we really just want a red source. Our mana base is pretty good for being able to have all the red that we need, but in case we do need it, Wayfarer's Bauble is a good way for us to do it. It only costs 1 more mana than Rampant Growth, and we can split it up over multiple turns. Arcane Signet is just as kind of compulsory as Sol Ring, 2 generic mana for a artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, so white or red in this deck. So a 2 mana untapped mana rock, yeah, it fixes our colors, of course we're going to run that. Boros Signet is another 2 mana untapped rock, and it taps for red and white. It makes 2 mana. However, we have to pay a mana into it to activate it at all. So we're tapping 2 mana sources, whatever we're using to pay into this, and the Signet itself to make 2 mana. So it's not like we're super mana positive on it. It's really just producing 1 mana aggregate on its own, in addition to the mana we paid into it, but it is filtering into the colors we like. So yeah, Boros Signet's very nice, and it's a 2 mana rock for us. We've got 2 other rocks, which are just definitely worse versions of Arcane Signet, and are still worth running because that's what we want in our 2 mana category. For 2 generic, we get an artifact, Fire Diamond, that enters tapped and just makes red, taps for red. The fact that it comes in tapped and only makes 1 of our colors is fine. Marble Diamond is the same thing, but it taps for white. So running both of these 2 mana rocks, even though we can't use them right away when they come in, and they only make 1 color of mana, still worth running in our deck because we want to have that kind of acceleration. Mind Stone is similar, comes in untapped, taps for colorless. That's fine with me. Talisman of Conviction also comes in untapped. It's a 2 mana rock that taps for colorless. Or we can tap it for red or white if we're willing to let it do 1 damage to us when we do. These talismans are great. If we need to tap it for colored mana, it's fine to take the damage. Not only are we a life gain deck, but it means we're spending 1 life to perfectly fix our mana for a spell we really want to cast that turn. That's worth 1 life. And if we're not doing that, we can just tap it for colorless. Totally fine. Talismans are great. We've seen the Claim Jumper does not ramp us if we have at least as much land as the person at the table with the most land. But if we're not in that situation, it'll at least get us up to where they are or closer to it with 1 or 2 lands. Pristine Talisman is a 3 mana rock that taps for colorless and gains us a life, and Paradise Plume is a 4 mana rock that taps for a color we choose, probably white, and gains us a life every time anyone casts a spell of that color. So those are our acceleration spells. Let's talk about interaction. Interaction is here. Again, I've just tagged this as removal for a shorthand. So Curious Farm Animals, we can sacrifice it for 2 to destroy an artifact or an enchantment, and when it dies of any cause, we'll gain 3 life. We are running Lightning Bolt because we're a red deck, so of course we are. You don't have to run the Mystical Archive printing. There are plenty of cheaper and other very cool arts for Lightning Bolt. But yeah, it's just, I really like the Mystical Archive, so I tend to run those printings if I can. For a single red, we get an instant that does 3 damage to any target. It's just solid removal. There's a lot of big stuff in Commander, but there's a lot of small stuff too, especially people's commanders these days. So a single mana to kill something, or kill a planeswalker, or combine it with an attack to make it into a kill, or just go face with it. Lightning Bolt's really flexible and powerful. So 2 are these next 2 spells. Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares are almost the same spell. They both cost a white, they're both instants, and they both exile a target creature, and they both give that creature's controller a little kickback. Swords to Plowshares lets that creature's controller gain life equal to the creature's power, and Path to Exile lets that creature's controller Rampant Growth. They search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So both of these are very good and extremely efficient at killing creatures, exiling creatures. Single white mana, very good. Next up from Lorwyn Eclipsed is Giant Fall. Giant Fall is it's 1 in a red for an instant that says either target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls, so it's Rabid Bite in red, or destroy target artifact. This is a good way for us to blow up an artifact if we don't have, Lorwyn of the Third Path to come in. Or at instant speed, we can just have one of our things bite an opponent's creature, which is great for us to do if we are attacking with a creature in the air that we've activated Bree to give flying and lifelink. Maybe we have a 4/4 flying in, and our opponent blocks with a 5/5 flyer that they flash in. That's too bad. But we can use Giant Fall to have our creature bite that creature first, which doesn't just mark 4 damage on that creature, but it gains us 4 life, which maybe makes our creature bigger if it's a Pridemate or something. And even if our creature has to die in the process of this, because we had it bite that defending creature first, it's essentially doing twice its damage or twice its power and damage, killing that creature and gaining us twice as much life. Giant Fall is really useful for us in that way. Lightning Helix is Lightning Bolt with 3 life on it. So yeah, we want to do that. Self-Destruct, we've already talked about as a essentially fling spell that gets us twice as much damage dealt, and so therefore with lifelink, twice as much life in the process. I like Emergency Eject as my 2 and a white instant that can blow up a permanent. I know a lot of people prefer to run Generous Gift, which can hit lands. Most of the tables that I play at and the power level of decks that I build for this channel, land destruction is not beloved at those tables. So might as well run something that gives me a little bit better effect. It just can't hit lands. So Stroke of Midnight, for example, is 2 and a white, just like Generous Gift, but it gives the opponent a 1/1 instead of a 3/3. Just can't hit lands. That's pretty good. I think Emergency Eject is slept on as being better, though, because it also destroys a non-land permanent at instant speed for 2 and a white, but instead of giving them a 1/1 like Stroke of Midnight, it gives the controller of that permanent a lander token. Lander tokens are Wayfarer's Baubles. You pay 2, tap, and sack the token, and you can Rampant Growth. So they have to pay into that token to crack it, and the land they get is tapped. So it's like the Rampant Growth they get from Path to Exile, but they have to pay for it. Of course, we're also paying more, but we're also hitting a non-land permanent. It's not getting destroyed instead of exiled. It's not the same thing. So anyway, I think Emergency Eject is very powerful, and it's one of my preferred ways for preferred sources of a destroy any non-land permanent for 3 mana spell in my white decks. Lorwyn is my preferred way to naturalize things because she's a 2/1 with Vigilance. Great to have fly in if there's no flying blockers, thanks to Bree. We get to naturalize something, or rather disenchant it with Lorwyn, and we get a little bit of card draw on subsequent turns. Finally, Balefire Liege does lots of things, but when we cast a red spell, it does 3 damage to target player or planeswalker. So that could be removal for planeswalkers for us, and just burn for players. Pretty good. Last in this section is we have Wraths. We're running 4 of them in this deck because they do so many different things. We've seen Deafening Clarion. We've actually seen all of these. Deafening Clarion does 3 damage to each creature. That's a traditional Wrath, just doesn't kill everything. But we can instead, or in addition, have it give all of our creatures lifelink until end of turn. So we've got a bunch of big creatures that may not die to this, and everything else everything we have gains lifelink. Ajani, if we 0 him and we've got at least 55 life, we can exile Ajani and every artifact and creature our opponents control. Very good. Curious Colossus isn't a traditional board wipe, but turning one opponent's entire board into 1/1 cowards with no abilities, that's pretty good and pretty close in our deck that's built around evasive attacking in the air. And Realm Cloaked Giant actually does destroy all non-giant creatures with the cast-off sorcery, so yeah. Plus we've got a 7/7 Vigilance we can play later to attack with Bree in the air. So those are our Wraths. We're going to go into our supplemental sections now, starting with our Synergy section. These are cards that care about the amount of life we have or the amount of life we gain. Not the same thing as our Payoffs, which care about us gaining that life in the first place. These are ones that care about the number. So Angel of Vitality becomes a 4/4 if we have 25 or more life, and makes our life gain better every time we have it. Resplendent Angel triggers at the end step if we gained 5 or more life. Book of Exalted Deeds triggers at the end step if we gained 3 or more life. Ajani cares, this is the synergy part of Ajani, cares about if we have 15 life more than our starting total, so we can activate his ultimate. We haven't seen Eartha Joe. Eartha Joe is 2, a red and a white for a 2/4 legendary core advisor from Thunder Junction. When Eartha Joe enters, we make a mercenary, which is a 1/1 red creature that we can tap at sorcery speed to give one of our creatures +1/+0 until end of turn. That's fine. Just getting a little token helps us out in one way, but also, whenever we activate an ability that targets a creature or player, copy that ability. We may choose new targets for the copy. So this is sort of our illusory bracers for our deck. Eartha lets us activate Bree, and when we do, we get to copy Bree's ability and choose another target. So paying 2 and tapping Bree with Eartha's in play lets us give 2 different creatures, flying and lifelink each, so helps us out a lot. And we can do, this is not just like once every turn, so if we wanted, we could take this mercenary and give one of those creatures we're going to fly in +1/+0 with it. And since we've activated an ability that targets one of our creatures, we could do it again. So it only works on activated abilities, not spells, and they have to target a creature or player, but we have a lot of those in our deck, particularly the important one in our command zone. So Eartha Jo is very helpful for us here, and as we make her bigger, maybe she's the one we want to let fly in with Bree. Maybe we have a big creature and also Eartha, so we activate Bree, Eartha copies Bree's activated ability, and we just go ahead and put it on Eartha herself. So we can just use Eartha as a supplemental attacker, assuming it wouldn't kill her in the process. Might as well. Twin Blade Paladin, much like the Angel of Vitality, cares about us having 25 or more life, because when we do, it has double strike. Angel of Destiny cares about us having 15 more than our starting life total, just like Ajani, so that at our end step, whichever player or players we've attacked with the Angel can lose the game. Gwahir cares about us having gained 3 or more life at our end step. Felidar Sovereign cares about us having 40 or more life in our upkeep, which could win us the game. Valkyrie Harbinger makes us a token if we have 4 or more life that we've gained during our end step. And Sarah Avatar, most simply, just has a power and toughness equal to our life total. Each equal to our life total. So yeah, that is our synergy section. Let's talk about how we're pumping up our creatures. Not that many ways, but they are repeatable or constant. So Guide of Souls lets us spend 3 energy whenever we attack to make one of our attacking creatures an angel with a flying counter and 2 1/1 counters on it. Kala, I think, gives all of our other attacking creatures besides herself a power bonus equal to the number of counters on her when she attacks. Balefire Liege makes all of our red creatures bigger and our white creatures bigger, and the ones that are both get bigger both times. And Nykthos Paladin gives us the option to put a counter on each of our creatures for each point of life we gained every time we gain 1 or more life. Those are our pump spells. Let's look at our evasion section. We've seen these already. Of course, Guide of Souls can make something an angel, in addition to giving it counters and putting a flying counter on it, so it just flies as long as it has that counter. Audric can let all of our creatures share their abilities, which includes things like flying and double strike and first strike and haste. But of course, flying is the important one since that's what Bree can give out, and it's evasive. And Gwahir can jump something, and so can the tokens that Gwahir makes jump things. So that's great for evasion. Next, we have a section that I've just called Drain and Burn, which are cards that not all of them are burn spells, not all of them are drain spells. All of them reduce our opponent's life somehow. So they've got their own section. Blind Obedience, of course, we can extort whenever we cast a spell and take away, have each opponent lose a life, and we'll gain an amount of life equal to the total amount lost. Lightning Helix is a burn spell. It can hit any target for 3 damage. Self-Destruct can go face as well. Suture Priest has our opponents lose life whenever creatures enter under their control, if we choose for them to, which we will. Aurelia can do 3 damage to each of our opponents whenever any player attacks with 5 or more creatures, plus we gain 3 life and draw a card. Balefire Liege can go face with its 3 damage to target player or planeswalker whenever we cast a red spell trigger. And Quintorius has his static ability of whenever we cast a spell from exile, each opponent's going to take 2 damage, and we're going to gain 2 life. That is our Drain and Burn section. We have a section for all of our tokens. It is missing... No, it's not. I didn't miss Eartha Jo. I thought I did. So anyway, Elenda's Hierophant, when it dies, explodes into a number of 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink equal to its power. Resplendent Angel makes angels at the end step, so does the Book of Exalted Deeds. Ajani can make Ajani's Pridemates. Eartha Jo comes in with a mercenary. Gwahir makes birds at the end step, the same way we would make angels. Quintorius can make spirits when we +1 him. Ride of the Raging Storm gives everyone at the start of their upkeep a 5/1 trampler with haste that they have to sacrifice, named Lightning Rager. And just like the Resplendent Angel, the Book of Exalted Deeds, and Gwahir, Valkyrie Harbinger makes us a flyer at the end step based on the amount of life if we've gained enough life. Those are our tokens, token generated cards. We have a protection section as well, ways to keep us and our things safe. So Restoration Magic can give a permanent, or all of our permanents, depending on how much we tier it up, hexproof and indestructible. Burdened Stoneback, we can pay and remove counters from it to make our creatures indestructible at sorcery speed. Book of Exalted Deeds can make it so we can't lose the game and our opponents can't win the game, in a way that you'll see soon. And Gisela doesn't just double all damage dealt to our opponents and their stuff, but also halves all damage dealt to us and our stuff. And of course we have the Swifties. Swiftfoot Boots are 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature hexproof and haste. Putting hexproof on our commander so that we don't have to recast her over and over, we are at least protected in that way, pretty good for us. Worth it and cheap monetarily, rather than, say, Lightning Greaves, which costs several more dollars and prevent us from targeting her with anything we might want to. So, like Burdened Stoneback's ability. So yeah, those are our protection spells. We have some recursion as well, only a little bit, but it's good enough. Quintorius, if we ultimate him, can let us recast a bunch of cards from our graveyard, or replay them, I should say. And Sun Titan enters or attacks and brings back a permanent from our graveyard that is mana value 3 or less. It's a little helpful. We have our Wincons section, which we've seen a couple of. There are more in the considering section at the bottom of the deck list. Angel of Destiny can make a player lose the game, and Feldar Sovereign can make us win the game. So pretty good for those sections. And that is all of our cards in our that are spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base. So we're going to start with our basics, which are very sad looking. 3 mountains, 14 plains, 17 lands, nearly 5 times as many in plains. Not sad in the sense that these are extremely beautiful arts. I love them. Sultan Boris, good grief. Both of these are actually gorgeous. The reason it's sad is because it's so few mountains versus our plains, but it makes sense. We're running about 70% of our lands are white, or of our spells are white, and 23% are red. So we've got a lot more red production than we have white production, but it still works out fine. It's just because we have so many non-basic lands, we don't end up needing to run that many basic mountains. It's just kind of funny. So yeah, we're running Glittering Massif, which is a bicycle land. Bicycle lands are dual-typed lands. This is a mountain and a plains, so therefore it taps for red or white. It comes in tapped, but it's a tap land, therefore, that is something we can find with Claim Jumper. Claim Jumper can find us a plains card. This is a plains card, even though it's also a mountain. So Claim Jumper puts it into play tapped. Glittering Massif's going to come into play tapped anyway. Great. We can also, if we don't want to play this, if it's in our hand, we can cycle it for 2 generic mana, meaning we pay 2 and discard it to draw a card. Something to do later in the game if we don't need another land in hand. We want a different card. So, but also a good hit for us to fetch with our Claim Jumper. We're running Clifftop Retreat. This is a check land. Check lands tap for 2 colors, one of 2 colors, so red or white in this case, and it comes in tapped unless you control a mountain or a plains. So we do have 17 basics that can make the check land Clifftop Retreat come in untapped, but Glittering Massif, a bicycle land, is a dual-typed land, which means if we have it in play, Clifftop Retreat will come in untapped, since it doesn't say if you control a basic mountain or plains. Pretty good for us. If you wanted to upgrade the Clifftop Retreat, you could upgrade it to Sundown Pass, which is a slow land. It may be more likely to come in untapped if that's the case in a commander game, but I generally don't put my check lands in my decks unless I have at least 19 lands that are of those types, and we do in this deck, so this is much cheaper than Sundown Pass, so yeah, worth running. Also, Glittering Massif, if you would like to upgrade that, you could go for Sacred Foundry, which is a shock land. It's likelier, you can't cycle it, but you can sure get it in untapped probably, and it's got those dual types. Again, just more expensive. We're running both of our filter lands in our colors. So Sun-Scorched Divide is the simplest one. It's just like our Boros Signet. Comes in untapped. We have to pay a generic mana into it and tap it to have it make 2 mana. So it filters our colors into the 2 color, or mana into the 2 colors we care about. So everything I said about that Signet is applicable here too. Also, we have Rugged Prairie. Rugged Prairie comes in untapped and taps for colorless. Or we can pay a red or white into it and tap it to produce double red, double white, or one of each. So very powerful land. It taps for mana on its own without us having to pay mana into it. It can make us double red or double white, whichever one we may need. I would say it's strictly better, except for the fact Sunscorched Divide can produce mana if we only have generic mana to pay, or colorless mana to pay. Rugged Prairie requires us to put white or red into it in order to tap for colored mana at all. So both of these are good in our deck, and so we want to run both of them, might as well. We're running 4 fixing lands. So obviously, Command Tower, it's just Arcane Signet as a land, if you want to think of it that way. It's an untapped land that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. You've got to run that. It makes white and red, it's an untapped duel. Sounds great. But what about a tapped duel that helps us in other ways? Path of Ancestry comes in tapped and has the same text as Command Tower. But whenever we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we get a scry off of it. We scry 1. So obviously, Bree shares creature types with herself. She's a giant warrior, so we have 7 other cards in our deck, 3 of which are giants, 3 of which are warriors, and 1 that's both, plus Bree herself, of course. So 8 total cards that we might be able to get scries off of with our tapped dual land, totally worth running. Myriad Landscape is a land that comes in tapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack, or in addition, we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type. So either 2 basic plains or 2 of our 3 basic mountains. We can put those on the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. Myriad Landscape is slow. But even though it comes in tapped, the lands we find come in tapped, and we have to pay and tap and sack it to go find them, it is 1 land drop that we're getting off of it that eventually turns into 2 lands, which in our deck is often going to be 2 plains, but you never know. So it is technically ramp in our land base. It's worth running. The same is true of Temple of the False God, which I know not everyone loves, but it is an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana. Like Sol Ring, it's a soul land. We just can't tap it at all unless we control at least 4 other lands, so 5 or more lands total, including itself. So if you have an opening hand that is a basic mountain and a Temple of the False God and no other mana sources, you probably want to mulligan that. But if Temple of the False God can come out by turn 5, or in some cases in this deck, turn 4, and be turned on because we have enough lands to turn it on, great. So even if this is just helpful in the mid game, it does accelerate us in the mid game because it's a single land drop that's tapping for multiple mana. Next, a lot more one-ofs in our non-basics. I don't typically run gain lands in my decks, but Windscarred Crag is great in this Lifegain deck. It comes in tapped, it taps for red or white, and when it enters, we gain a life. So just a helpful thing for Bree. We are running a Horizon land. I don't think I've ever run these in my decks before, although maybe. Sunbaked Canyon is a land that comes in untapped, and it taps for red or white, but we always have to pay mana for it. Well, pay life for it, rather. So it costs us life every time we tap it for mana at all. Or we can pay 1, tap, and sack it to draw a card. So we play this. It is a pain land for us, but we're able to get our colored mana right away. We don't have to wait. It's just dangerous for a little while. But we've got enough life in our life gain in our deck that this is not terrible for us as essentially otherwise a tapped duel. And when we're done with it, we can just sack it and turn it into another card that we might draw. Seems good. An actual pain land, or what I call the actual pain lands, is Battlefield Forge. This is the same as our Talisman of Conviction. It comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can tap it for red or white if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. Everything I said about the Talisman of Conviction is just as true here. It's worth that damage, even in a deck that isn't a life gain deck, to perfectly fix our mana, and when we don't need to do so, we just tap it for colorless. I like the pathways. If you want to save a little bit of money on this deck, you can by not including them. It's a couple of dollars, but they're really good. Needle Verge Pathway comes in untapped and taps for red, or we can play it on its backside as Pillar Verge Pathway. Taps for white, comes in untapped. Whatever we need in that moment, we've got it. We're running Temple of Triumph. This is a scry land. It comes in tapped, taps for red or white, and when it enters, we scry 1. So it's a guaranteed scry as opposed to the possible repeated scry of Path of Ancestry, but that's fine too. If you would like to upgrade this, you could upgrade it to Elegant Parlor, the Surveil land, which doesn't just surveil instead of scry when it comes in, but it also is a mountain and plains, so you get another typed duel. It's just, of course, more expensive than this. And Radiant Summit is our Tango land. This is a typed duel, so it's a mountain and plains, just like our bicycle land. So we can fetch this if we want with Claim Jumper, and it enters tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. Well, about 1/6 of our deck is basic lands. So if this comes in when we have a mountain and a plains, both basic, in play, great. It'll come in untapped, and we've got an untapped duel. It just requires those to be basics. And we can't fetch this with Claim Jumper and have it come in untapped, even if we have 2 basic lands, because Claim Jumper specifically puts those cards that it fetches into play tapped. Just thinking about it. Again, you could upgrade the Radiant Summit to a Shock land, of course Sacred Foundry. The same is true of something like these Pain lands. Not really much in the way of upgrading for the Gain land and the Pathway, but yeah, good options overall. Finally, we have 7 utility lands in this deck, several of which are basically the same as each other. Adventurer's Inn is a town from Final Fantasy. It taps for colorless, it comes in untapped, and when it does, we gain 2 life. The same is true of Radiant Fountain. When it enters, we gain 2 life, comes in untapped, taps for colorless. Basically the same card, but a good way for us to turn on Bree's last ability just by playing our land drop. Similar to those is Kabira Crossroads. This is a land that enters tapped, and when it does, we gain 2 life, but it taps for white. So pretty nice for us. It does come in tapped, but it's a source for white and it gains us 2, as opposed to these that come in untapped and gain us 2, but just make colorless mana. We're running Demolition Field. I usually do in most of my decks, because I mentioned earlier, you don't want to have, at most tables, it's not that welcome to run Land Denial, but you have to have one answer, just one answer, to some kind of problematic land, like a Voltron player playing a Rogue's Passage that makes their creature unblockable, or a Control player playing a Maze of Ith, or a Glacial Chasm that makes it so it's hard for us to do damage to us. Any kind of non-basic land that would accelerate someone else's game plan a lot, or maybe even empower it, or would get in the way of our game plan, it's fair game to have one answer to those things, and Demolition Field, I think, is the best kind of answer for this kind of power level of a deck. So it's a land that comes in untapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land an opponent controls. They then get to search their library for a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped, and so do we. So neither they nor we are down a land, and instead of their non-basic and our Demolition Field, we both have an untapped basic in play. So we've been able to answer a problem, and no one's that hurt by it. It's just we've slowed someone else down a little bit. Speaking of those kinds of lands, we have Rogue's Passage. We want to be able to get in sometimes, and sometimes flying may not be enough in the way of evasion. So Rogue's Passage comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap it to make a creature unblockable this turn. So we can use this politically. We can say, hey, opponent A, I know you want to attack opponent B with your commander and kill them with commander damage, but they've got too many blockers. What if we use our Rogue's Passage on your commander and make them unblockable? And then you'll be able to kill opponent B, and in the process, you'll ignore us, and you won't bother us the rest of the game until it's just the 2 of us. Opponent A might say, that sounds great, go ahead and do it. And we'll say, no. We don't want to activate Rogue's Passage before combat because you could attack us with that creature and we wouldn't be able to block it. And they would say, okay, that's fair. We're making a deal, we'll trust each other. I will go to combat and attack opponent B with my commander. And then we'll say, we are honorable. Before blocks, we will activate Rogue's Passage to make your commander unblockable. So then everyone wins. Pretty good. But most of the time, again, we're using Rogue's Passage on our own creatures to ensure that we're able to get in and hopefully finish someone off, or at the very least, get some damage get some life, and turn Bree's second ability on for our instep. We're also running Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion. May not come up that often because we're often a little bit mana starved in this deck, just because we need to save mana to activate Bree in addition to wanting to cast our spells. But it's an untapped land, taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 mana, 2 a red and a white, and tap it, so that's tapping 5 mana sources, but it does give one of our creatures double strike until end of turn. very nice if we can do this prior to combat or prior to the resolution of Audric's ability, so all of our creatures get double strike. That can be totally worth, 4 mana and tapping the Sunholm. Finally, however, we have Mutavault. Mutavault is a untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 1 and it becomes a 2/2 creature with all creature types until end of turn that is still a land. So not only is this good because it becomes like a giant, so, cast off doesn't kill it, but it becomes an angel. Mutavault becoming an angel is so relevant because of the Book of Exalted Deeds. This is the trick I've been wanting to mention. Book of Exalted Deeds, if we pay 3 white and tap and exile it, we can put an enlightened counter on an angel. Mutavault, if we animate it, is an angel. That Mutavault gains the text, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. We can only do this at sorcery speed. But if we activate Mutavault, turn it into a 2/2 with all creature types, including angel, then pay 3 white, tap and sack the Book of Exalted Deeds, put the enlightened counter on Mutavault, Mutavault gains that text. And then at the end step, or at the end of the turn, assuming Mutavault hasn't been removed or something, it goes back to just being a land. And at that point, we will never activate its second ability again. We will just tap it for mana. Because now we have a land, which is the hardest thing for other players to interact with, that makes it so we can't lose the game and our opponents can't win the game. That ability does not require that the permanent it's on remain an angel. It doesn't even require that it retains that enlightened counter that Book of Exalted Deeds puts on it, because the enlightened counter is just a memory counter. It doesn't, the ability to have the Platinum Angel text does not say, as long as this card has an enlightened counter on it, it has the ability, or as long as it has the enlightened counter on it, you can't win the game or you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. It just 100% is from memory. So this little trick with the Book of Exalted Deeds, we can for sure put that enlightened counter on one of our angels. Makes that angel a little bit of a removal magnet, because our opponents want to be able to win and they don't want us they want us to lose rather. But if we have our Mutavault, this is what we should do with it. Back in Standard, when the Book of Exalted Deeds was in Standard, so was Kaldheim, and we had Faceless Haven, which was a land that we could animate with snow mana to do a similar thing. Mutavault is cheaper, easier to do, and we don't have to run snow lands in order to make it work. So yeah, that's our little fun trick with the Book of Exalted Deeds and Mutavault, and it's unlikely to ever come up, but when it does, you're going to remember it. Good times with a good deck. And that sums this deck up. Again, I'm releasing new Lorwyn Eclipsed Commander decks every Thursday through mid-March when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set drops, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific Lorwyn Commander or deck style. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm so glad you could join me for this deck. I think that Bree of Clan Stoutarm is so beautiful and so wonderful, and just, yeah, I really like this deck a lot. So I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when I post my many videos, and most of all, remember that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.